Hello, Scott Hampton here, aka Cisco Server Geek. I wanted to take a chance to show you all the new UCS Director 6.0 interface as well as integration with our HyperFlex system. So I'm going to treat this as somewhat of a, a little bit about it, but actually probably don't know anything about it. So I'm going to start from scratch on UCSD. I also want to show you how easy it is to create a workflow and how some of that stuff connects with the infrastructure. So let's take it away. So UCS Director is Cisco's orchestration and automation framework for the data center. We include over 2,000 tasks for automating server, storage, network, virtualization, basically all the administrative consoles that are in your data center. We can connect to those and perform automated tasks. Right, so then those tasks get stitched together into what we call a workflow, well, what everybody calls a workflow, to do the orchestration, and then we can publish those in a catalog for self-service. So self-service in our context is really what the IT administrator would do, right? So instead of jumping back and forth between different management consoles with NetApp, EMC, vCenter, Hyper-V, XYZ console, we create workflows that automate those tedious tasks, right? So that's useful. So if this is really your first foray into orchestration and automation, you might be doing some things with scripting right now, which is great, right? I love PowerShell. The problem with scripts, though, is there's not a lot of auditing, right? So if you don't have a change control system, some type of service desk application, finding out who did what, when they did it, what happened, that's very important. The other thing is what happens if you have to roll it back. We've all had the oh crap moment when we do some type of task in the data center and then somebody calls up and says, can't get the email, server's down, website's not working. So our tool actually allows a rollback feature built into every workflow where you can roll back what's going on. So I want to show you guys some of that. You can also do some light skinning on the interface that you can see here. So this is not indicative of any customer nor an endorsement by anyone. This is just some skinning that I did to show what you could do. So what I'm first going to do, I'm going to log in as a demo user. This would be like an IT administrator, and I'll show you what the new interface for 6.0, which is pretty slick, and what's in our catalog and things that I can attach and do. So once I do that, then we'll go into the administrative interface, and I'll show you how all that stuff is actually created on the backside. So let's just dive right in. So I'm going to log in as demo user. And then once I'm in, you'll see the new 6.0 interface. If you're used to the old one, this is much nicer, cleaner, slicker, has all the common look of a UI that everybody knows and loves today. So the first thing you see at the top of the screen, there's a dashboard, right? If you click this little menu button, there's your common menu items that you had in the old interface, right? So on the dashboard, I can quickly see how many VMs I have, how many are on, how many are off, how many service requests I've submitted, catalog items. This is for doing the workflows, and if I was an administrator and I had any approvals that I needed to approve, I could do that in this interface here. You can also you can create your own dashboard down here, and any of the little trending dashlets, or I guess that's what they're called, you can actually put those on this front dashboard. So stuff that you want to see. So I like to see, right, what's the trending for CPU usage in the context of what I'm using, and trending for memory disk usage or whatnot. So let's do something very simple. So something that an administrator might do all the time is deploy VMs. Right? Now another common question that comes up we get over and over again is, okay, you guys acquired Clicker, which is now Cisco Cloud Center. So what's the difference between UCS Director and Cloud Center, right? I've seen both of them. They both have catalogs, and they both do automation, orchestration type things. The simplest response to that is UCS Director creates your cloud, right? AKA does all the things in IT infrastructure for the data center, and Cloud Center really fills your cloud. Cloud Center is geared more towards application deployment in more of a hybrid cloud situation, actually. So everything that we do inside of UCS Director is really is really geared towards building and automating and the infrastructure pieces of it, whereas Cloud Center is really geared towards applications. So maybe we'll do a demo on that sometime later. But so the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to, well, let me bring up vCenter on the back end so you can actually see what's happening. So like I said, UCS Director, you give it the credentials for all the management things in your data center. So I have connections into this vCenter. I've got connections into UCS Manager, right? Blah, 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 blah. So what I want to show you is when we actually deploy this, I'm going to keep this up so you can see in the back end that actually is just talking to your existing vCenter and doing the actual deployment. The other thing is we just consume what's already in the infrastructure. So with UCS Director, once you make the connections into the different management consoles and all your different things in the data center, you don't have to recreate anything. I point to this vCenter and I use the templates that already exist on this vCenter. I don't have to create anything else, right? So there's no recreation. And all these tools can coexist, right? If you're wanting to just get your feet wet inside of UCS Director, you can roll out a couple simple workflows, but all your other stuff still works, right? And it simply takes constantly monitoring for inventory information to see what's changing in your infrastructure, and then that shows up inside of UCS Director. So we'll see that in a second here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy a Linux VM in this environment. All right, so I'm in the group called IT Admins, and I'll just simply select Next here. So this is a workflow that was created inside of UCS Director, right? The first thing it asks is, what VDC do you want to go into? Okay, so a VDC in the UCS Director context is a virtual data center. So this construct is central to everything that we do inside of UCS Director. The VDCs are defined by policies, right? And policies are things like compute, network, storage, virtualization policy, which define what parts of the data center this group has access to, right, inside this VDC. So think of a VDC as a slicing and dicing of your physical data center into slices that are just pieces of the data center. So for example, in computing policy, I might say, well, in the San Ramon development VDC, the computing policy says they only get access to older systems, right? Or they only get access to certain hosts inside the ESX cluster, or they only get access to certain clusters, or they only get access to certain machines that have greater than 512 gig of RAM. It's very granular. We'll see that in a second here. So in this instance, though, the development and the production VDC, the only difference between them is I created a policy where one needs an approval and one doesn't. So we'll put it in the development VDC where no approvals are needed, right? And then I can do, there's cost policies that are also attached to VDC, so we'll see how much this will cost once we get further in it. Now for this VDC, I also define policies that says let the developers change the number of cores, right? I define this, right, inside of my policy, so I actually can limit, right, the selections in this dropdown. Same thing with the memory. I said, you can select different amounts of memory, but I define what that looks like, right? And then you see once we make some changes here, it starts to give me an estimated cost, because my costing models are based on CPU usage, CPU deployment, vCPU deployment, how much memory is used, how much memory is in use, not in use, deployed, lots of different models for the costing, and we can take a look at that also. Now I also said I'll let the developers change the size of the data store. So if I drop this down, right, this Linux template has one data store that's 4 gig in size, but if the developer wants to highlight it and hit the little edit button here, I also allowed them to change the size, right? And again, I define what that looks like, right? So we'll just keep it at 5, and then I'll say next, and then it will give me any custom workflows, which I don't have in this workflow, and then it gives a summary. All right, here's what it's going to be. Here's how much it's going to cost your department, and then I'll say submit. So now what's going to happen is this creates a service request, right? If I click here, I can actually see the service request. And if I open that up, it'll show me all the tasks that are happening, right? And if you keep an eye back here, because it might be too quick and it'll actually deploy. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to look at any budget allocation or resource limits. So I can also, for the group, I can set limits. So I don't have any approvals for the developers, but I set a resource limit that says, hey, you can't deploy more than 100 vCPUs, right? Or you can't use more than, a terabyte of RAM or whatnot. So there's my virtual machine getting cloud right now. Boom, it's complete. My policy is to give it VM-group name-service request number. So this service request was, what was it, number 43? So now I've got a VM admin server 43. That's my Linux deployment, right? So that'll get finished. And then once that finishes, you have a VM. Right, so very, very simple to do that piece of it. That's a standard workflow that's included inside of UCS Director. Super easy. And again, I didn't create anything in vCenter. I'm just simply using things that already exist in there. So another thing that I could do, let me show you a more advanced workflow that's not super advanced, but it'll allow me to show you the rollback feature. So if I go back into my dashboard, the other thing. So once, let me show you. This is pretty important. So the developers, or we'll just pretend these are developers, right? So this IT admin group, I've got 13 VMs deployed, 11 that are on. I can now, in the context of this interface, I'm never going to give people access to vCenter, right? I mean, that'd be crazy. That's ludicrous, right? You're not going to do stupid stuff like that. But you're going to have more advanced users that say, hey, I really need to be able to turn my VM off and on, right? It hangs up sometimes. I need access to vCenter to do that. And you're like, nah, I can give you access to do vCenter operations in this menu, right? So when I actually highlight any of the VMs that are deployed for this group, you get these little icons and more actions, right? So, and these are the same things that are up on the left here. So if I want to launch like RDP, or if I wanted to actually launch the VMware web console, I could do that. So I could launch this, and this will launch RDP, and boom, there's my server, right? That's pretty nice. But more importantly, the other things that I can do are things like maybe I want to resize this VM, all right? So I could do that, and I could change the CPU and the memory count, right? Do the resize on that, or I want to turn it off, turn it on, or I want to take snapshots of it. I can do all that through this interface. Now, the things that this group and user are allowed to do are also defined by a policy. So if I'm showing every option that you could do, but if I want this user to only be able to do turn it off, turn it on, and take snapshots and launch the console, I can do that, right? And then that's all that they'll see inside of this menu. And again, that happens by policy. We'll show some of that stuff when we actually get to the other side of it. Now, let me do one more service request. So I'll go into my catalogs, and I'm going to advanced. So I have a service request that says create a VLAN on UCS and ESX. So this is more of a multi-step workflow, right? So instead of just doing one thing, it's going to do multiple things. This is the simplest example to show because I can have, let me bring my UCS manager up. So, boom. So let's say, right, for example, I need to create a VLAN, right? Well, that VLAN needs to be created as a port profile inside of vCenter. It needs to be created as a VLAN inside of UCS Manager. If I've got Nexus 1000 switches, it needs to be created in there. If it needs to be created on my physical switches, it needs to be created there, right? So it's not just one place that this has to happen. It has to happen in multiple places. So and you're probably starting to think about it right now, right? Any task I have that I do over and over and over again, I can make a simple workflow, right? So let's roll this one out real quick. So it's pretty easy to do. So I'm going to create a VLAN. It's going to create it on UCS and vCenter, right? So I'll give it a name. We'll call it Cisco Server Geek. Okay, it needs a VLAN ID, 406. And I'll say next. And same thing. Once I submit this, there's going to be a service request. I click here. I can see the request. And it's going to add a VLAN, and then it's going to add a VLAN UCS manager, and then it's going to create it inside of vCenter. And I've been talking so much that it popped over here. So if you were looking, you saw this pop up, and I look over here, I'm going to see, created it. Add port group created over here. So if I go into inventory and networking, I should have a Cisco Server Geek port group. Boom. So it's right there, right? So this will finish. It's complete. Yada yada yada. Now, so let's say that I did that. It's not quite done yet. Let's say I did that, and all of a sudden my phone starts ringing. Page is going off. Oh my God! What did you do? What did you change in the environment? Email's not working. Holy shit! You got to get us back up and going. Oh, holy crap! You got to get us back up and going, right? There's a feature, right? I can click on this service request that we just did, which was, create the VLAN inside we just did that. I have an action here that says rollback. All right, so I can roll back the entire task, or I can roll back just pieces of it. Right? If I know what actually went foobar and it's just said, oh, it just need to take it off of here, I can do that, or I can do the whole thing. So let's do the whole thing, and let's watch over here. So I've got this. Pop that down so we can see them all at the same time. And I've got this inside of UCS. So if I go here and I say submit this request to rollback, it will now roll this back. And in a second, we'll see these two things disappear. Now that functionality is built into the product. So for all those tasks that we have predefined, they have rollbacks also predefined with them. So there it is, gone right there, and in a second it'll be gone over here. So, and then anything that you do, you can roll back. So if you also create a custom task, I can create a rollback for the custom task. Right? It's a little more advanced, but that's what happens. That is a quick demo of the new UCS Director dashboard. All right, you saw catalog items, you saw how things are deployed, you know what a service request is, we sort of know what VDCs are, we sort of know what the groups are, we can see what we can do with VMs. It's very nice. So how is this stuff actually created on the back end, right? How do I stitch all this stuff together? So what I'm going to do here, let's go ahead and log in as an administrator inside of UCS Director. So I'll be admin, and don't say my password out loud, I do that too much. All right, so now this is the administrative interface for UCS Director. So the first thing you see here is we're on the Converge view. You see a few different pods and sites. All right, so in the construct of UCS Director, sites are physical locations or whatever grouping you want to use for your definition of a site. So in this example, we have San Ramon, Houston, and the UK for different sites, right, across the world. Once you have a site, inside the site, you put pods of equipment, right? So that can be our converged infrastructure with FlexPods, HyperFlex, vBlocks. You can also create pods that are just generic legacy infrastructure. Right? So what's actually in a pod? The things that are in a pod are the management tools that you're used to using, right? So for example, in this HyperFlex pod, it has an instance of vCenter, an instance of UCS Manager, and an instance of HyperFlex, right? If I have my legacy infrastructure, I might have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 instances of vCenter, right? They could all be defined inside that pod. I might have, 5 different domains of UCS. They would all show up here, right, as I define them. I might have different network devices. They would all show up here, right? So that's how I start to organize, right, my data center into sites and into pods, right? Once I have those constructs created, I then go and create my different policies, right, against these different pods and sites to further create the virtual data centers, the VDCs. So let me show you first of all. So if you're familiar with all this, you're probably like, just show me where you've got HyperFlex and what the integration points are in there. We have under HyperConverged, we have a HyperFlex view. So here is a HyperFlex system in my new converged view. Right? So it shows me the capacity of the pod, how many nodes are actually in the pod, whether they're active or in maintenance mode, the number of VMs, and then I can actually start to click across here and see the different clusters I have in my HyperFlex system, the controller nodes that are across, right? Any of the data stores that I have here. I can also create data stores from here. I can change, I can mount, unmount data stores. I can change the size in here. I see all my disks, right, which are here, all the VMs. And again, every menu item and every view inside of UCS Director, I can actually export the view, right? So I could export this whole thing into a CSV file and use that for you know, whatever else I wanted, right? So pop that up and bring that up in WordPad. It's going to be a bunch of, right, boom, bunch of information. You're really going to put that in a spreadsheet though, but spreadsheets still rule our lives, don't they? So this is the integration point, right? This is the new view you get inside UCS Director for HyperFlex, right? You also have some tasks that we can use. So there's different tasks for mounting and unmounting data stores, resizing data stores, deploying ReadyClones, and we'll actually do that. I'll show you how to create a catalog item, and we'll use the HyperFlex task as an example for that. I'll show you how quick we can do that. So getting back to our converged view, just one more second here. So if I go in here, these management things, if I click on them, same thing, just like the view I got into HyperFlex. So this instance of vCenter, I have a view right into it. I can see all the host nodes that this vCenter is controlling. I can see all the VMs that this vCenter is controlling. Right, this is all under the context of UCS Director. And same thing, like I had as my user, right, as the administrator, I have access to everything. And if I highlight that VM, right, there's everything that I can do with that VM. Same stuff, right, powered on, powered off, resize it, snapshots, clones, revert snapshots, mount ISO images. Everything I do inside of vCenter, I can do inside of here. This is exposed, right, because you might want to start living in here for, you know, talking to everything. But really, all these things are exposed also as tasks inside of our orchestration designer, and I'll show you that in a second. One thing in here that I really like, we have this stack view. So this answers the question. There's a pretty common question of, hey, what infrastructure is this particular VM touching? This view answers that question, right? So it goes from, what's the OS on it? What VM is it? Okay, so inside that VM, I've got virtual network adapters and virtual disks that are actually attached to physical equipment. So what is that? Hard disk one. What data store is that actually on? Oh, okay. Well, what physical storage controller is that on? I can see that from here. Same thing with the network, right? I don't have any real physical network things in this instance, but here's the VNIC, here's what port group it's on, here's what vSwitch it's on, here's what hypervisor it's on, and if I had like a port group on a Nexus 1000, it would be in here, and then which physical devices that land on. So that's a pretty interesting view that I like to show. Okay, so getting more into what are these VDCs and how are they defined? All right, so let me just show you real quick. So the way you actually connect to the infrastructure is inside of administration and then physical and virtual accounts. So under the virtual accounts, this would be where my vCenter is at, right? So in virtual accounts, right, there's my vCenter, right, there's the ID, the address for vCenter, the credentials, all that stuff, right? So this is how I connect any number of vCenters, right? And if I wanted to add like an instance of Hyper-V, right, I've got Hyper-V, and I'm going to do the same thing. I would give it the credentials for that. For physical equipment, it's the same thing, except it's under physical accounts. So this is where my UCS Manager instance is defined. This is where my HyperFlex instance is defined. This is where I would define network elements. Right, so if I want to add a network element into the environment, and then here's where you dump it into what pod, right, where does it actually live. So that's the importance of the sites and the pods and where are they. Right, so here's the different network devices that we support. Right, I can have NextOS, iOS, right, all my Catalyst stuff, ICE, ASAs, even F5 load balancers, and brocade fabrics, and all that stuff. So that's all defined here. So I'm going to stop saying so much. I feel like I'm saying so going to get out of my system. Oh, and more ums. If I was in, what do they call that thing? Yeah, having a brain, whatever, right now. Anyway, that's where I define all the physical things. So once the physical things are defined, I can start to create policies. Right. So first of all, let's look into the virtual data center. In our example, I had the development data center and I had the production data center. Those are right here. Right. In the group IT admins, I have a development VDC and a production VDC. I'm going to look at the development VDC, and this will show me the policies, right, that define this VDC. So in the development VDC, I have the important stuff down here at the bottom. Here's the policies, right? So what systems, right, is this VDC allowed to use, right, as far as computing and system policies? What networks is this VDC allowed to attach to? What storage is it allowed to attach to? What's the costing model? And right here's what's the self-service policy. So this is where I talked about you can the actions that the VMs that the user can do are defined by this policy. Right? So there's all the policies. This is what makes up a VDC when you create a VDC. Okay, so what are these things, right? So let's close this and let's actually look at these policies. So I'll have a computing policy, right, for VMware. So I've got a VMware computing policy, and I have the San Ramon VMs policy that I've defined. So what does it actually look like? Oh, here's what it looks like. So I can actually pick, right? So I've already defined what vCenter instance it is, right? If you notice, we talked about how I define the connections into the different vCenters. I just have one vCenter, I call it VMware. So that's what that's connected to. I can actually select what resources, right? So these, right, I don't create these. It queries this vCenter and it knows, right, what resource pools are in there. So I could restrict inside of that VDC only access into certain resource pools. Right? I could also filter by versions of VSX. I could pick actually particular hosts. Right? So I could say only allow, right, those hosts to be selected. Put it back to all. And then here's my filter conditions, right? I can filter on CPU core speed, total memory, vCPU ratio, a lot of different things, right? Where you can really slice and dice this thing very granular on the VDC level. And then again, right, in my development org, I said allow resizing of VMs. So those options that we had are here. Right, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 for the vCPUs, and here's the memory that I'm allowing to change. Right, so that's one policy for compute. Let's look at another policy real quick for, let's say, storage. All right, so inside of storage, I had a VMware storage policy because it's just talking about the data stores. So in that San Ramon development VDC, here's my storage policy. My storage policy says, hey, only use this data store. All right. And that's the one that I picked, right? So the users can't accidentally put it onto the wrong data store, right? And same thing, right? I could also do filters for these different conditions, and then there's my resizing, right? That I allowed. I said allow 5, 10, 50, or 100, so that's right there, right? Okay, so that makes the VDC, right? I create the policies. Then I attach the policies to the VDC, and then I assign the VDC to groups. Right? So inside my administration, when I go into users and groups, and we have LDAP integration also, right? So you can put this into Active Directory. I've got this IT admins group, and well, actually, when you create the VDC, you assign it to the group, right? So there's my IT admins group. If I wanted to do resource limits, right? So I think I do have some resource limits on them right now. Yeah, so I have resource limits. I only allow, right, this set of resources to be deployed inside this group. So if they try to do anything that goes over that when they submit a service request for one of those catalog items, and it goes over the amount that they're budgeted for, it'll kick back and not let them do it. Right? So that's really nice. All right, so that is, hopefully you have an understanding. We're into 30 minutes now. So within 30 minutes, you understand the basic constructs of UCS Director. You've seen the HyperFlex integration. You understand creating the accounts, creating the policies, and then attaching those to users and groups. Now, what I want to do next is actually show you how easy it is to publish an item in the catalog. Right? So right now, if we go back to our that might be in the way. So we go back to our user portal. Right, I have 2 standard and 2 advanced catalog items. My advanced items are create some ReadyClones and create a VLAN. So let's create another workflow that we can publish to the catalog for deploying ReadyClones. So I have one already, but I'll just create a new one so we can use that one, and I'll show you how easy it is. So there I go with the shows again. In the policies, we're going to go into orchestration, and let me show you how it works on the backside. All right, so now we're into workflows. Here's my workflows. They're grouped into folders, right? So I've got, right, in the system folder, I have create VLANs on UCS and VMware. So that's a workflow that I already have published. Bring a workflow up, it brings you into the workflow designer. Right? So here are where all the tasks are that you do inside of UCS Director. So I talked about, basically over 2,000. It's probably way more than that, but there's over 2,000 tasks. Right. I can search by VMware tasks. So here's all the VMware things that I can do. I've got UCS. Right. I've got UCS stuff that I can do. You can also drill down. Right. Physical compute. Here's my UCS task. Here's also HP tasks, right? We support other people's hardware. I like to continue to point that out, right? The name of the product is UCS Director, but it's not just for UCS. It's for anything in your data center infrastructure, right? So I have ILO tasks to control HP systems. I've got stuff for the onboard administrator. I've got generic IPMI tasks, right? Pretty much every server in the world can talk IPMI, so I can talk to it. I can turn it on, turn it off, do some simple things, but obviously we have much more integration inside of UCS because that's our core. That's what we do. All right, so getting back to what this workflow is. So when you find a task that you want, you simply drag it and drop it into the workflow designer. So we'll make a brand new one, but I just wanted to bring this up to show you real quick. So so this is my task. It's to start here, add a VLAN. This is the one that adds it into UCS. Right, and then once that's complete, it then adds it into then creates the VMware port group. But when I have tasks like this, they require inputs and outputs. I can actually use the outputs from the previous one as inputs into the next one. So that's what allows me to create these, huge tasks and just have a flow through. So let's make a new one. Right, so I'm going to make a new one. I'm going to add a workflow. Now I'm not going to explain everything that's in here. We're going to do the minimum to get this up as quick as we can and show you how it gets in the catalog and we're up and going, right? So we're going to create a workflow called Bring Out the Clones. And we're going to use one of our new HyperFlex tasks to create ReadyClones on the HyperFlex system. So it needs a name, right? We just use the minimum stuff. The minimum stuff is stuff with a red dot, right? That's mandatory, it's required. So we need a name. We'll allow it to run in any context. We can put it in our HyperFlex folder because once you start to get create more workflows, they can get out of control pretty quick. So you want to kind of organize them. All right, and then we'll say next. And if I wanted any custom inputs, this is where I could create the custom inputs. We're just going to use the inputs that are in the tasks already, so we won't need any custom ones. But I highly recommend you start looking at what you can do as far as the inputs, because this will allow you to actually restrict ranges. We're not going to do any error checking on this, but this is how, with a custom input, you could, check a range, make sure it only falls within a certain number, make sure it's only text and doesn't have special characters. You can do all that checking right beforehand. But since we're just doing a demo, we're going to skip on that, and then we're going to submit, and now we have a workflow. We have our bring out the clones workflow. So it starts somewhere, and then it has to do something. So we're going to search for that HyperFlex task. All right, so here's the new tasks, right, you have inside of UCS Director for integration with HyperFlex. So I've got data store operations for creating, deleting, editing the data stores, mounting, unmounting, and creating ReadyClones. That's what we have right now, okay? So we're going to use this task of create ReadyClones. I'm going to drag this over here. It's going to pop up and it's going to give it a name. Don't really worry about changing the name or the number of this. It's really not important. And then we're going to click Next. All right. Now it's going to ask for inputs, okay? And when you look next to the inputs, it's going to say which ones are mandatory, and then I can choose to map those to user input, so I can let the user, control some of these things in the workflow. If I have a mandatory item that I haven't mapped to user input, when I click Next, it's going to tell me. It's going to say, hey, I need more information to actually do this task. If you don't provide this information for me, the task isn't going to work. So that stuff we do as static values, or we control what that is. So I'm not going to let the user pick the HyperFlex account name if I had multiple of those. That's going to be static for me. However, I will let them choose what template they want to use. Right? So I'm going to map that to user input. And you see, I don't have any user input because I didn't define it. So I'm going to create it real quick. And we're going to call this, okay, now the input label is important because what you put in here is what is published and shown to the user, right? So if I put some garbage in here that a user doesn't understand, that's not going to help in any way, right? So this one I might just say, choose, if I can spell, choose your flavor of OS, right? Because my templates are simply flavors of operating systems, right? And it knows that this input type is a template name, right? So I'll say submit on that. And then that's added successfully, and then that's going to say map to choose your flavor of OS, right? Now, number of clones, okay, I will let them do, right, how many they want. So that one, I'll map to user input, and I'll say how many clones, all right? And then that's just generic text input, and I'll say submit on this. But again, right, there's no error checking, there's no anything. This is just give me a number, right? If we had some custom inputs, I could restrict it to, hey, 1 through 10, right? Or give them a drop-down box that says just certain numbers that they can pick. Now, the other funky thing here is once you do that, it doesn't default to what I just did, so I got to make sure I choose it right, how many clones. All right, so there's how many clones. We can do, this is VMware customization specs, right? We're not going to do any of that. I can pick a resource pool. I do want the user to do a name, right? Let me have them do the name. So we'll say name of VM. So it's going to be the name of the VM. So submit on that. All right. Now again, we got to pick, right, name, prefix. Now it also needs a guest name. I don't care if they're the same, so I'm just going to map this to actually to the same input, the name of the VM, so that'll be the same. I don't want them to pick the start number for the clone. I don't want them to pick, right, how it's going to be incremented. So we're going to say next on this. And then now you'll see, right, here's the thing that says, well, hold on, I still need this, this, and this, right? You have to do that. So I need to know, right, which HX account name it is, right? We just have the one HyperFlex account, right? This is back when we did administration, physical accounts, setting that stuff up. If I had multiples, they'd appear here, right? So I'm going to pick this one. I'm going to say select. And then I'm not going to do any customization. I'm not going to do any resource stuff, but I'm going to say start at number 1. And because I'm a psycho, I'm going to say increment by 3. And then I'll actually have a power on after deploy. All right. And then we've got user output mapping. So I'm not doing anything after I do this. So this output, it doesn't matter. But again, I could map this into inputs for the next task. Right. So I'll say submit on this, and now I have hopefully a valid workflow. The way that you can check if you have a valid workflow is to validate the workflow. So that'll go through and make sure that you picked the right things and you didn't miss anything. Workflow's valid. Boom. Now I could actually execute this from here, right? As you get more advanced on these things, you're probably going to stay inside the workflow designer and just execute tasks that you want to do, so you don't have to keep bouncing back and forth between different interfaces. But our goal is to publish this in catalog and show you how quick that is. So let's do that. So now I have this HyperFlex called Bring Out the Clones, and I don't know why it says not valid, because we just validated it, right? Workflow validation, boom. Yeah, it's valid. I did that. It's just not refreshing. No, you hit refresh. No, yeah, there we go. Normally it refreshes pretty quick, but whatever. All right, so now we're going to publish this for our users. So we'll go back into policies and catalogs. All right. So we're going to publish this just to the IT admins group. So I'll go to inside of IT admins, and I can say add. Now select catalog type. So standard, that's the stuff that's built in that we did with the VMs, right? The advanced is where I want to pick a workflow. All right, so I'm going to go advanced, say submit, and we'll call it bring out your clones. Ooh, I don't know if that worked. Okay, bring out your clones. You can pick an icon. These are the default ones. You can also upload different icons. I always pick this workflow one. It's just simple because it's at the very bottom. Selected groups, we're already in the context of IT admins because that's where we started. We're going to publish it to our end users, and then I'm going to say next, and it's going to say, okay, well, which workflow? I need to know which workflow, dummy. So we go in here, and what do I call it? Clones. Call it bring out. Yeah, I call it bring out the clones. So there's my workflow ID. I'll pick that. I'll say select. I'll say next, and I'll say submit. Catalog submitted successfully. So boom. So now we have a new bring out your clones. It's in the catalog and it's published to the users. So now if I go here and do a refresh, boom, bring out your clones, new workflow. If I wasn't talking, I probably could have done that in, I don't know, 4 minutes, pretty quick. Hopefully, though, that gives you the idea about how simple it is to actually create grab the tasks in the workflow designer, drag them over, pick your inputs, map them to your outputs, submit, publish in the catalog. Right, very simple for that piece of it. Actually, creating some of the workflows can get pretty complex. Let me see, if you want to import some workflows and actually, at this point you might say, well, if people do this, and we probably have very common things that we do over and over again as a community, don't you guys have that published somewhere? Well, yes, we do actually. Let me see, I think this is connected to the internet. Let's see, google.com. Yeah, so if you search on Cisco UCS Director, community, workflows, that should probably get me where I need to go. There you go, yes. Orf, Mr. Awesome Orf, has created this workflow index into over 300 workflows that different people, our engineering team, our pre-sales engineers, our post-sales engineers, our services team, they've created lots of different workflows, and they're available for you for free, right? We're not charging services money for you to get this stuff. So all kinds of different workflows. You've got things like, let me find. I got things like Remedy integration. That's a pretty common thing. People say, hey, I need to integrate this with Remedy. I want my ticketing system to be updated, or I want things to flow back and forth. So we've got an example of that, right? All kinds of different stuff. So just go to the community site, get your workflows, import them in, start playing around. It's a lot of fun. Start asking questions. It's a pretty active community. But let's get back to where we were, right? I said, I was where I wanted to be. So I have this new thing, bring out your clones. So what we're going to do again, right, we're going to execute this, but what I'm going to do, we're going to have vCenter up in the background so we can see stuff happening. So we'll go back into inventory, VMs and templates, We got it right here. And then I'm gonna bring out my clones. All right. Now, as we click through this, remember, right? We chose this, right? We said choose your flavor of OS, right? That was because of what we input into the label, right? So, like I said, that's important. That's a drop down, right? It's looking at my system, right? My system knows it has Linux and Windows templates. If I actually created more templates, I wouldn't have to update. I don't have to update this workflow at all because I said, right, pick any of the templates that are on here. So as I create more templates inside of vCenter, those are available for my users, right? There's no modification of the workflow that has to happen, which is really nice. So we'll create a clone of this Linux VM. They'll say how many you want. I want 12, okay? And what do you want to call it? I want to call it AAA because I want it at the top of the list. I want a dash because I want my numbers to not be all squished together. And then I was a psycho and I said go by 3, so I'm going to get what, 1, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, you know, whatever. So I'll say next. I'll say submit. And boom. Well, let's go here. In a second, we'll see them pop up. Right, as I bring out my clones, I can look at that. Right there's the task and the workflow. And now this is actually using, yeah, there's my cycle number. This is using the VAI integration of HyperFlex to deploy the clones rapidly. All right, so it's you know, it's not the native clone that's inside of vCenter. So that's, yeah, different conversation for a different day. So all right, hopefully you see, right, that's pretty simple to create the service requests. Pretty simple to roll them back. You can see right in the service request window, right, who did it, when did they do it, what's going on. The other thing I'll show that's pretty nice, we'll go back to the administrative interface here. I have reports. It's pretty nice. They're under the CloudSense menu. So if I look in reports, I have some default reports here, so I can get a billing report for the customer. So if I want to do some show back for a different group, right? I've got some different things that I've already created here. I can generate a new report. I want to see, right, what this group has spent, right? And I'll say submit on that, and then boom. So now I've got this customer billing report that shows me a breakdown of where do the costs, right? Where are they coming from? You know, how much has been costing this group for the month of November. And right, where are those costs coming from the VMs, right? Which VMs are costing me the most money? You know, what's going on there? So you can generate those reports and give them back to different groups. And you know, you're probably not charging people anything, but what is nice is you can go back and say, yo, you've been using a lot of the server resources. Maybe it's time for your group to pony up a little bit of budget here, right? You can also create custom reports inside the report builder. So things that I just care about, right? I've got into a template, and then I can run a baseline report on that, and then every so often I can run more reports on it and compare them from different times. But it's kind of nice. So mine is just simple, right? I want to see what nodes are in the cluster. I want to see the VMs that are in the cluster. I want to see some trending on CPU, disk, and memory utilization, and what's the status of the nodes. But you can create lots of different reports. All right, and with that, hopefully you've enjoyed. It's been 48. Wow, if you stuck with me for 49 minutes, hopefully you can go to cisco.com and download UCS Director and give it a try for yourself. It's included in Cisco One Enterprise Cloud Suites. It's still also available as a standalone product. And it's also available as a demo inside of dCloud, right? So if you're not using dCloud, I highly recommend you use dCloud. Everything I did here, you can do in dCloud. It's was it dcloud.cisco.com? Not on a system that has all my bookmarks. Yeah, so dcloud.cisco.com. So this is free for you to use. All you need is a Cisco.com ID, which is free to register. Once you log in, you get access to, do a quick dCloud commercial here, so let me. And I know how long my password is. Good luck, hackers. All right. So this pops me up into my dashboard, my sessions, but in the catalog, all right, search in the catalog here for UCS Director. I don't think the 6.0 has been published yet, but I have access to it, and I just want to see demos. And scroll down. So yeah, so here's some different demonstrations that you can do, right? Cisco UCS Director 5.4 with Store Magic. We've got an installation and configuration lab. The 6.0 stuff is coming really quick. But again, with dCloud, I simply schedule, right? That I want to do this demonstration, and then pick a time and say next. What I get back is an email that says, okay, I'm going to deploy this, and it depends on the demo, but it takes 5 minutes to 30 minutes to deploy all the infrastructure. But once that's actually done, all you have to do is it gives you all the credentials to just you connect into the environment, right? So you do a VPN into the environment, and then once you do that, you get an RDP session into the environment, right? And it has, right, let me go back to my dashboard. Every demo actually has every demo has a full walkthrough of how to do the demonstration, right? So the team does a great job of publishing a PDF that you can have just up on a second monitor that'll walk you through everything. So you can learn. It's a great way to learn about all of our products. A great way to test our software. And also it's a great way just to play around and have a sandbox environment. So if you know you just want to do something inside of vCenter, and right now I know this demo with 5.5 and VMware, it has a vCenter instance in there, and I want to muck around and do whatever, just kind of go off road with it, you can totally do that. So again, highly encourage you to utilize dCloud, free resource for everybody. You don't have to be a customer. It's free for everybody. And if you have any questions about what I talked about today, just ping me on Twitter. It's Cisco Server Geek, and thank you very much for your time. Have a great evening. I'm going to